Hey there, and welcome to ClearPath Conversations, the podcast where customer journeys find direction. I'm Mark Bernardin, Customer Success Manager, author of The Path to Green, and founder of ClearPath CX, and this is episode 1. If you work in customer success, if you're trying to build something meaningful in this space, or if you're just tired of all the noise and buzzwords floating around LinkedIn, you're in the right place. This first episode is personal. I want to tell you why this podcast exists. Also, what you can expect and who it's really for. But more than that, I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough in our field, and that's clarity. Because here's the truth. Customer success is drowning in confusion right now. Titles don't mean the same thing from company to company. Processes are all over the map. KPIs change every quarter. And for most CSMs, especially those just starting out, there's no real playbook. So we're left improvising, guessing, and hoping we're doing it right. This podcast exists to change that. So let me start by telling you how I got here, because like most people in customer success, I didn't plan this career. I kind of fell into it. I started in project management, classic operations work, managing timelines, dependencies, stakeholders who couldn't agree on anything. That background taught me early how to take chaos and turn it into something predictable. How to communicate with people who spoke different languages, literally and figuratively. How to keep things moving when everything around you is shifting. Eventually, I joined a small cybersecurity startup called FishMe, which later became Cofense, as a program manager. And looking back, that's where my customer success journey really began, even though we didn't call it customer success at the time. I was designing anti-phishing programs for enterprise clients. I was onboarding them, managing their success, running quarterly reviews, troubleshooting escalations, advocating internally when customers hit roadblocks. I wasn't just delivering a product. I was building long-term relationships. And more importantly, I was responsible for helping those customers actually get value from what they'd bought. That's customer success. I just didn't know to call it that yet. And then when I finally moved into a formal CSM role, it felt like coming home. Everything I'd been doing, the strategic thinking, the relationship building, the problem solving, it now had a name. It now had a framework. It now had a purpose. And I leaned into it hard. Over the years, I've had the privilege of working with companies like Swimlane, Proofpoint, Palo Alto Networks. I've managed portfolios worth over $8.5 million in annual recurring revenue. I've worked with household names like Lowe's, Accenture, the Home Depot, Ernst & Young, and many government agencies. But here's what I'm most proud of. I've earned a reputation for taking on the accounts that everyone else has given up on. The really red accounts. The ones marked as at risk or likely to churn. The ones with one foot out the door. And I turned them around. Not through magic, not through luck, but through structure, through clarity, through what I now call building a path to green. Let me give you an example. A few years back, I inherited a customer that had already been written off internally. The relationship was toxic. The customer wasn't responding to emails. The sentiment score was basement bottomed out. I was literally told by leadership, just don't make it worse. Within 60 days, we renewed that customer. Within 90 days, we expanded the contract. And within 120 days, that same customer submitted a glowing reference to our executive team, calling me the best CSM they'd ever worked with. Now, how did that happen? I didn't overpromise. I overprepared. I listened. I really listened to what was broken. I built a detailed get-well plan and communicated it clearly to both the customer and to my internal teams. And I followed through on every commitment, no matter how small. I turned chaos into clarity and clarity into results. That experience became the foundation for everything that I do now. It's why I wrote The Path to Green, and it's why I started ClearPath CX. And it's why this podcast exists. Because I believe customer success shouldn't be a guessing game. If a customer is at risk, build a path to green. If a relationship is stalled, map out the next 3 steps. If your team has no process, create the playbook. Don't wing it. Build a clear path. That's what this podcast is about. Now, let me be clear about who this show is for. This isn't for people who want to debate the philosophy of customer success, or it's not for folks chasing the latest trend or trying to build their personal brand. This podcast is for the people actually doing the work. The CSM who walks into every customer call prepared even when no one else is. The person who's writing internal escalation docs because someone needs to document what's happening. The team lead who's mentoring junior CSMs between their own fire drills, or the solo CSM at a startup trying to build an entire function from scratch. Or the show is for the seasoned professional managing a complex enterprise portfolio while half their internal team turns over every 6 months. This show is for the people who still care, who want to do this job well, not because it looks good on LinkedIn, but because it matters. This podcast is for CSMs who give a damn. And I'm going to say that phrase a lot throughout this show, because I think it cuts to the heart of what separates good CSMs from great ones. It's not about credentials or certifications or how many followers you have. It's about showing up consistently and with purpose. So what can you expect from ClearPath Conversations? Some episodes will be tactical deep dives, how to structure a risk escalation that actually gets acted upon, how to run an executive business review that your customer's C-suite actually cares about, how to prioritize your time when everything is on fire. And other episodes will zoom out a bit. How to manage burnout in this role, how to advocate for yourself internally when your company doesn't really understand what a CSM does, how to grow your career without losing your soul. Sometimes I'll walk you through specific frameworks that I've built, like my customer health score methodology, or the expansion opportunity tracker that's helped dozens of CSMs identify upsell potential before their sales teams even know it exists. You'll hear stories, real ones, wins, losses, and everything in between. Accounts I've saved and accounts I've lost. Lessons that I've learned along the way, the hard way. And everything I share is going to be grounded in actual experience. Not theory, not wishful thinking, but what has worked in the trenches. Now, let me tell you what this podcast won't be. It won't be overproduced. It won't be full of buzzwords. It won't be feature interviews with people who haven't managed a real CS portfolio in years. This isn't a branding vehicle or a thought leadership platform. It's a place for working customer success professionals to get clear on what they're doing, why it matters, and how to do it better. I won't promise a rigid publishing schedule because I'd rather drop episodes when I have something valuable to say rather than stick to an arbitrary timeline. But I will promise this: when an episode lands, it will be worth your time. You'll also hear me reference tools and resources that I built over the years: templates, worksheets, playbooks, assessment frameworks, things like this. Most of these will be available online. Some are free, some will be bundled into comprehensive toolkits, but all of them are going to be designed for one purpose, and that's to help CSMs stop guessing and start executing with confidence. Now, if you're reading The Path to Green or any of my other books, this podcast is also designed to be a companion to those works. It's a way to go deeper on those frameworks, to hear the stories behind those strategies, and also to get context that you're not going to find on the written page. Now, let me share one more story before we wrap up. Early in my career, I was managing a portfolio that included some of the most challenging accounts in the company: high value, high maintenance, historically difficult customers. When I took them over, several were marked red in the system. One of those customers was Lowe's. The relationship had been rocky for several months. There were product issues, communication breakdowns, unmet expectations on both sides. The previous CSM had essentially checked out. Within my first month, I scheduled individual calls with every key stakeholder. I didn't try to sell them on anything. I just listened. I asked questions. I took notes. Then I did something that apparently no one had done before. I synthesized everything I'd learned into a comprehensive action plan, not just for the customer, but also for our internal teams. I identified what was broken and also who needed to fix it, and a timeline for when it would get done. I created a communication cadence as well that kept everyone informed without overwhelming them. I established clear metrics for success that both sides could agree on. Most importantly, I followed through on every single one of those commitments. 6 months later, that customer renewed early. A year later, they expanded their platform significantly, and by the time I transitioned on to the next role, they were one of our strongest advocates. The stakeholder that I worked with most closely at the customer told me that I was the best customer success manager that they ever had across any vendor. Now, that didn't happen because I'm naturally gifted at customer success. It happened because I brought structure to chaos. I turned guesswork into process, and I replaced assumptions with clarity. That's what this podcast is here to teach you how to do. Because here's what I know after more than a decade in this field. The CSMs who succeed long-term aren't necessarily the most charismatic or the most technically skilled. They're the ones who show up consistently, who build systems instead of just solving problems, who care enough to do the work that doesn't always get recognized. They're the ones who give a damn. If that describes you, or if that's who you want to become, then you're exactly where you need to be. Now, in our next episode, we're going to dive deep into the first 90 days as a customer success manager. So whether you're onboarding into your first CS role or you're a leader helping someone else navigate those crucial early months, I'm going to give you a roadmap that actually works. We'll talk about what to prioritize, what mistakes to avoid, and what success looks like at the 30, 60, and 90-day marks. It's going to be tactical, it's going to be detailed, and it's going to be immediately actionable. Until then, here's what I'd love you to do. Follow ClearPath Conversations on whatever platform you're listening on. That helps other CSMs find the show. Connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Mark Bernardin. If this episode resonated with you, drop me a message. Tell me where you are in your CS journey. Share what challenges you're facing. Let me know what topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes. This podcast isn't about me talking at you. It's about building something useful together. Something that makes this field a little less chaotic and a lot more strategic. Customer success matters. The work you do matters. The relationships you build, the value you create, the problems you solve, all of it matters. But it matters most when it's done with intention, with structure, with clarity. That's what ClearPath Conversations is here to help you achieve. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. And thank you for being the kind of CSM who gives a damn. I'll talk to you soon.